The lighthouse keeper. Every morning, before the gulls circled the cliffs, before the fishermen untied their boats, before the first hint of sunrise touched the sea, an old man woke without the need of an alarm clock. Time had become his clock. Duty had become his companion. His beard, once dark, had now turned the color of sea foam. The deep lines across his face spoke of storms, hard winters, and burdens no one had ever asked him to describe. His hands slightly trembled, not from fear, simply from the passing of time. He lived alone in a small stone cottage nestled beside the lighthouse. There were no trophies upon his shelves, no portrait upon his walls, no letters waiting on the table, only a worn wooden chair, a cast-iron kettle, and an old brass key, the key to the lighthouse. Every morning, he swept the stone floor, polished the lantern glass, checked the gears, filled the oil cans. Everything had its place. Everything had its purpose. The villagers knew his routine. Every evening, at precisely the same hour, the old keeper climbed the spiral staircase. Every evening, without fail. Children tried to count the steps they imagined he would climb. Most adults had stopped noticing years ago. The lighthouse simply had become part of the coastline, as ordinary as the tide itself. Yet, there was one question no one could answer. Why? Why had the keeper never missed a single night? Not during the bitter winters, not during illness, not when the winds screamed against the cliffs, not even after the losses that would have broken most men. Whenever someone asked, he simply smiled, then looked quietly towards the sea, as though somewhere beyond the horizon there was a promise still waiting to be kept. The lighthouse stood alone, perched upon towering cliffs, where the sea had spent centuries trying to reclaim the land. Its white stone walls bore the scars of countless storms. Salt stained every window. The wind found every crack, and still it stood. Just before sunset, the keeper picked up his lantern, lifted the small can of oil, now to more than 200 stone narrow steps that circled upward into darkness. Every step echoed through the tower. His knees protest, his back ached, his breath grew heavier than it once had been. Yet he never hurried, nor did he stop. At the top, the great lantern waited. He cleaned the glass with careful hands, trimmed the wick, poured the fresh oil. Then, with a quiet reverence, he lit the flame. As darkness settled over the sea, the beam of light would reach across the water. Far beyond the cliffs, ships adjusted their course. Families slept peacefully. Most would never know who kept the light alive. Years passed this way. The keeper asked for nothing, expected nothing, and received little recognition. His reward? Simply knowing the light had never failed. Then, one autumn afternoon, the sea changed. The gulls disappeared. The wind grew strangely still. The dark clouds swallowed the sky. Old fishermen looked towards the horizon, then hurried home without saying a single word. They knew a storm was coming. By sunset, the sky had turned nearly black. Rain struck the windows like thrown stones. The ocean crashed against the cliffs with a fury few had ever witnessed. Doors were barred. Candles were lit. Families gathered together. The mayor walked from house to house. "Stay inside," he said. "No one belongs outside tonight." The keeper stood quietly beside his window, watching the lighthouse, watching the gathered darkness, watching the place where the sea and the sky disappeared into one endless shadow. A neighbor knocked upon his door. "You've done enough. One night won't matter. No ship would be foolish enough to sail this." The old man listened, then looked once more towards the tower. He nodded politely, picked up the lantern, lifted the can of oil, and stepped into the storm. The wind fought him with every step. The rain soaked his coat within moments. The path had nearly vanished beneath the rushing water. Several times he stumbled. Several times he reached for the stone wall to steady himself, but he never turned back. Inside the lighthouse, the spiral staircase seemed steeper than ever before. Each step demanded more than the last. The tower groaned beneath the force of the storm. The windows rattled, the lantern glass shook. Still he climbed, one step, then another, then another. At last he reached the top. His hands shook as he cleaned the glass. He trimmed the wick and poured the final measure of oil and struck the flame. The light burst into the darkness, cutting through rain, pierced fog, reaching farther than a human eye could even see. Morning finally came. The storm had passed. Broken trees lay scattered across the village. Fishing nets had been torn from the docks. The sea remained restless. Just after sunrise, a battered fishing vessel appeared beyond the harbor. Its sails hung in ribbons. Its hulls bore fresh scars from the hidden rocks. Silence fell across the dock. The captain stepped onto the shore, embraced his family, then asked one single question. Who kept the light burning? The villagers pointed toward the lighthouse. Then the captain slowly removed his hat. His voice barely above a whisper. We never saw the shoreline. We never saw the harbor, he paused. We only saw the light. Far above them, the old keeper quietly cleaned the lantern, as he had done thousands of times before. Tomorrow evening, he would climb those stairs again, not because anyone expected him to, not because anyone applauded him, not because anyone would remember his name, but because somewhere beyond the horizon, someone was depending on that light that they would never know had been kept burning, just for them. This is Vixen Voice. If you enjoy this, please like and subscribe. And there is much more on the channel. Thank you for listening.